Monster Hunter was always a series that I found to be so interesting as an outsider. I wasn't able to get into it for a while, having difficulties when first trying out World and soon dropping it because I accidentally chose one of the hardest weapons to use, but I eventually found my breakthrough with Rise last year. And I know that it hasn't been a long time, but I've completely fallen in love with the series, and now that I'm a fan, I realize just how in-depth and full of passion these games are. No matter where you look, everything is full of life and character. There's always the thrill of the hunt, but there are just as many joys when taking your time to look at all the small details around you and the monsters. Sure, each of us eyes looking directly at the player instead of the hunter. Aslos having the electric guitar in its theme to represent how volatile its personality and fighting style is. Devil Joe throwing a rock at you the instant it locks eyes on you to prevent you from running away from it. And yes, that did happen to me, and it was terrifying to say the least. But it's all just so cool. And it's these tiny touches that make Monster Hunter so special to me. But there's a certain monster that makes my jaw drop every time I think about it. Everything about it, and I mean everything, is just pure genius. And that's Malzeno. As the flagship monster, Malzeno is the very core of Sunbreak's story. You are first introduced to it when you are summoned to aid the kingdom, as it is plagued with rampant monsters that threaten to destroy it and its remaining people. Little by little, you soon discover that the reason why the monsters were acting so abnormally violent is because they were controlled by the creatures called the Curio, leeches that drain their life force and cause them to rampage. Following the Curio eventually leads you to Malzeno, the daunting elder dragon who is initially seen as their master. At a first glance, it's obvious that Malzeno has a vampiric motif. Its scales are a deathly pale color, and its bone structure is sharp and jagged, giving it an undead and skeletal image, especially with its glowing red gaze that pierces through its dark, sunken eye sockets. This is complemented by the deep red on the inside of Malzeno's wings, and the curio that covers its chest, representing the blood it drinks to fuel itself, as well as the gold that accents its tail, talons, and horns to give it a sense of wealth and nobility. Its neck frills and thin, fabric-like wings act like a cloak, with the curio acting as its jabot, all of which can be seen in popular depictions of Dracula. Additionally, its talons on the tip of its wings are in a curved, sickle shape, similar to the fangs of a vampire. These details are further reinforced through its animations as well. When feasting on its prey, Malzeno flicks its wings like a cape to send forth the curio, before calling them back, and, before teleporting in battle, it wraps its wings around its body like a bat cocooning itself. As for its fang-like talons, Malzeno uses them to viciously strike downwards on the hunter, like a bite clamping down on flesh. Even its theme song, Scarlet Feast, screams vampire with its title and gothic classical instrumentation, but you don't exactly think much past that. Malzeno is equally elegant as it is deadly. It was the monster that brought ruin to the kingdom 50 years ago, and for that reason, you have to take it down to prevent history from repeating itself. At least, that's what you believe until everything is slowly revealed through Malzeno's true form, Primordial Malzeno. In reality, the true culprit behind the kingdom's fall was Geismagorm, the monster that was responsible for releasing the Curio onto the people. As a plague ran through the kingdom due to the Curio's onslaught, Malzeno, who once existed with the kingdom and was seen as its protector, fought fiercely against Geismagorm to defend its land. In the truest sense, Malzeno was the kingdom's knight, and the sentiment is perfectly represented through its design. In comparison to base Malzeno's blood red and dull white color scheme, Primordial bears a noble blue that signifies the righteous justice it stands for. Its scales are brighter and have a more silvery tone, which ironically is a weakness to vampires of folklore, and the gold on its outline has a warmer hue, giving it a regal and heavenly image. Where base Malzeno looks sickly and decrepit, Primordial is steady and powerful. Instead of cape-like wings and devilish horns, Primordial scales make him appear as if he's wearing a suit of armor, fitted with a seraphic helmet and golden gauntlets. Even Primordial's moveset show how pure its character is. While base Malzeno takes cheap shots at you with its long-range attacks and attempts to catch you off guard by teleporting behind you, Primordial fights you with honesty and dignity. All of its moves are purely physical and upfront, even representing a knight through its fighting style of using one of its wings as a shield and the other, as well as its tail, as its sword. Your fight against Primordial is less of a hunt and rather a duel, but it all gets thwarted when the Curio come back to prey on Malzeno, and this is where the truth becomes even more evident than ever. While Primordial is preoccupied with its fight against you, the Curio are the ones to backstab and take advantage of it. We thought Malzeno was the one controlling the Curio in its base form, but the confusion and panic Primordial displays while it's forcibly taken over shows that the Curio were the ones to turn it into the vicious beast we once saw. However, while base Malzeno and the Curio seem to work alongside each other, there's an explicit struggle between the two with Primordial. In its first stage after transforming, the blue of Primordial and the red of the Curio have a definite distinction between them, separating the two despite their fusion. More specifically, the Curio collect on Malzeno's chest to form the same jabot as before, but the wings, the area which most of Primordial's armor-like scales are, is where we see the blue. This tells us that the Curio were the ones to force Malzeno to inherit that haughty barren persona we originally saw, as opposed to its true, modest, and knightly self. Although we can see that Primordial mostly keeps its physical strikes, we also begin to recognize similar attacks to when we first fought base Malzeno, specifically its long-range attacks that we now know originate from the Curio. Eventually, Malzeno's attacks become increasingly violent and erratic due to it losing more control of itself. Its blue begins to blend with the Curio's red, the line between the two being muddled. Its wings start to thin and tear like base Malzeno, and while we originally thought its appearance was a simple nod to Dracula, it's more so that the Curio have drained so much of Malzeno's life that it is left only as an empty husk of itself, a walking corpse. It's a painful sight, especially when it performs its hardest hitting move, where it flies up to the sky and lets the Curio's energy pour over you like a rainfall of blood, before teleporting and exploding with a massive burst, plummeting to the ground soon after. Afterwards, it is forced back onto its feet, and while this is a clear sign of how much the Curio strained Malzeno, all of this can be visualized in its theme song, something that was there from the very start. Like its design, the specific instrumentation of the track paints Malzeno in a villainous light, and sounds like something straight out of Castlevania. But when given a closer listen, it actually repaints the battle against both base Malzeno and Primordial Malzeno. Throughout the song, the main instruments that are heard are the church organ, strings, brass, and a choir. At a first glance, this composition fits base Malzeno to a T, adding onto its elegant yet prideful persona. The beginning portion, where we hear a decrescendo that evolves into a powerful crescendo, is able to paint the picture of Malzeno landing gracefully before its prey, in this case you, the hunter, before striking. Soon after, we get a section where the strings sound almost jumpy, as it alternates with the percussion. You get a sense of agility and finesse from the strings as the notes hop around, which is accurate to how Malzeno actually fights with its rapid slashes. This gets further built on when the same concept gets adapted through the brass. With how much louder the brass sounds in comparison to the strings, these jumps sound more powerful, similar to how Malzeno starts teleporting further into the fight in order to land an attack on you. However, there is quickly another decrescendo through the strings, which then leads to a quiet section with the organ. As an Elder Dragon, Malzeno is terrifyingly intelligent, so the slower section, which gives off the sensation of Malzeno stalking you and watching your every move, is extremely tense. This eventually builds up and transitions to the main chorus of the song, representing Malzeno charging up and striking you once again. However, with the main chorus, it sounds like a waltz between you and Malzeno, a graceful duel to the death. The way the organ and the choir take turns is reminiscent of how both you and Malzeno take turns attacking each other, taking advantage of every opening you see. Hearing Scarlet Feast when you first fight Malzeno is straightforward, but it is still able to illustrate its fighting style and personality also perfectly just through a musical format. All you are able to figure out about Malzeno through the song is within the moment. However, what's most impressive is how this theme evolves once you fight Primordial Malzeno and learn its history. Now knowing the truth behind Malzeno and the Curio, the theme goes from intimidating and vain to almost sorrowful, especially with the fact that the specific instrumentations within the song holds a hidden meaning that pushes past its vampiric motif. With Primordial Malzeno, instead of it being a battle between it and the hunter, it has now become a battle against the Curio, like how it originally was 50 years ago. The church organ and strings, instruments that typically stand for age and refinement, represent Malzeno, while the brass, instruments that can easily overpower in sound, and the choir, the voices of the many, represent the Curio. Going back to the start of the song, where we originally pictured Malzeno landing before its prey, we now notice that it starts with the organ and strings for the decrescendo, before being overtaken by the crescendo of the choir and brass. Additionally, the seesawing that we once recognized to be a symbol for Malzeno's speed in battle has now shifted with the same idea. If we take note of the specific inflections of the organ in the section right after this, we can hear that it sounds anxious and unstable. The way the notes rapidly spiral down is symbolic of the same panic and confusion Primordial felt while being swarmed by the Curio, especially since it immediately gets overthrown by the vocals and brass soon after. The section that we thought was to be a Malzeno's teleportation has evolved as well. Each pulse begins with a powerful blast from the brass, before getting quietly trailed with the organ. The chorus reinforces the idea of Malzeno being the Curio's puppet, as its organ follows after the notes the choir sings. It's a tragic melody, especially when you hear Malzeno's violin attempt to rise above the instrumentation with a note that sounds like it's reaching up for help, but it quickly gets dragged back down by the choir and brass once more. This final section aligns perfectly with Primordial's last phase, where it is fully taken over by the Curio. There is no blue or silver to be seen on its body, as it is completely engulfed in black and red. Its attacks are manic and destructive, clawing and slashing at anything it sees. With how frenzied it has become, it seems as if there's nothing you can do to save Malzeno from its fate. But, just like its theme song, you get the tiniest glimpse of hope. Despite the blaring of the choir and brass, the song ends with the strings. The two pulses, almost like a faint heartbeat, represents the very little left of Malzeno that's still trying to fight back. However, the other instrument that is present in this final section is the drums. The percussion is an absolute constant in Malzeno's theme, being heard in both Malzeno's sections and the Curio's, and, just like them, it is also a symbol for another that's present in the fight, the hunter. Like the song itself, with how it begins solely with the strings and the percussion, the fight starts out with just you and Malzeno, before it gets interrupted by the Curio. Now, with it ending with the same instruments, it illustrates the image of Malzeno finally being set free with your help. By working together, you can finally end the terror caused by the Curio and bring peace back to it and the kingdom. Malzeno is a terribly tragic monster. Despite fighting against Geismagorm and the Curio to the best of its ability for its people, it was forced to accept the deal with the devil in order to survive. A noble warrior that was stripped of its armor and was transformed into the very thing it sought to vanquish. Only in death, when it is hunted, is it finally free. All of this is why I can't stop gushing about Monster Hunter and its developers. They are so incredibly talented to not only design such a majestic monster, but to incorporate story directly into its design, moveset, and theme song. Just the idea of having all these aspects be available right from the get-go with base Malzeno and have it evolve through Primordial is absolutely mind-blowing and deserves all the respect in the world. While I feel that the chances of Malzeno returning in future installments will be low due to how restricted it is to his Sunbreak story, it'll be a monster that I'll remember for years to come due to the absolute genius of it all. But, you know, Malzeno and Wild's pretty please! Thank you for watching. This video took a lot of work and time to put together, so it'd be a great help if you could leave a like. I also have other videos similar to this one on the channel and have even more planned for the future, so if you enjoyed and want to see more, then please consider subscribing as well. Lastly, I want to give an extra special thanks to the members of the channel. You are all helping my dreams become a reality, and I can't be any more grateful. And I would like to give one final thanks to my friend Troy, who helped me get some footage of the Malzeno fights so I could study them and get all my details right. Thanks for being my bait.
This might be my end. This might be my end. I'm jumping off a bridge.